Hey, what's up you guys? Marty Schwartz here with Marty Music. Thanks for checking out this video. You ever wonder why professional athletes use music to get psyched up for a big game? Or why loud music ratchets up the energy in the stadium? I've always wanted to better understand the science behind music's power to motivate us. I was able to sit down with Nicole Richard, a neurologic music therapist from Belmont University. Nicole's knowledge of neuroscience and motor skills made for a fascinating discussion, and I can't wait to share it with you. Let's dive into the conversation. Let's get into how music helps people like when they're studying, for instance.
Yeah.
We'll get into the pumping up, like
Sure.
boxing match, UFC,
Yeah.
basketball games, all that. We'll do that next. But when someone's, listening to music while they're doing a task, what's going on there?
Yeah. One thing I like to get out of the way when talking about different types of music, the reality is that there's music is so subjective and it really depends on our individual likes and dislikes.
Right.
And so, for somebody who is familiar with like metal music and loves that and that's meaningful to them, they may listen to that and that's great. And they're gonna listen to classical music and be like, I don't understand this,
Right.
I don't like it.
So there's a conditioning involved and a familiarity that you might have.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes you lean towards
Right.
something.
Right.
Just how, if we were raised in, another part of the world that didn't do, Western music scales.
Right.
Like we wouldn't, if we're from the time we're born, hearing more.
Right. That would be more interesting
Yeah,
and
like
wonderful and meaningful for us.
I would be fascinated to like switch places with someone from a different culture and see what it feels like to hear Western music as the weird music,
I wonder
or
if it
as
would
the
just,
unfamiliar music.
I know. I think of that too. Sometimes I wonder if it's more boring.
That's what I think. Like, there's not as many notes.
Right.
Wait, you mean they're not playing the notes
And
in between the
it's
notes?
supposed to be simpler and things like that. But
So it's a tough concept to wrap your head around that depending on where you were brought up and the music that's part of your culture really reflects how you feel about music. We have Western music, which uses a very specific system of the major scale and the minor scale. Whereas Eastern music in other parts of the world, they use extra notes and microtones and little bends that we don't listen to as part of our music. So I'm gonna start just by showing you what we think of as, the roots of Western music, and then show you some of that other sound. Where we grew up here, Western music, we have the major scale, and we also hear major as happy sounding, and then we hear minor as more sad sounding. So let me show you that. So if I just took a chord, that's a major chord, and I can play the major scale over that, and it has a pleasant, happy sound to our ears. Now we have what's called the minor scale, which is our sad version of that sound. In Eastern music, the Middle East, Indian as well, they use extra sounds that we don't use in our music. Now I can emulate it on the guitar, but this is this is designed as a Western instrument. When you hear an Eastern scale, you immediately are going to describe it as exotic sounding, but a foreign sound. And so it might be something like this. Now we can get even deeper into that. I have a Korean audio track for you to hear. Once again, it's another region, but it's not using our Western system. And so you're gonna hear right away that it has an exotic sound to it. So let's check that out. How would you describe that? Happy? Sad? Neither? Just makes you think. We're talking about studying.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things that come in. One is personal preference. So if you listen to music that you really don't like while you're studying, it's probably not going to help you, right?
Would
it's
imagine.
Sort of intuitive, right? So it's good if you like the music to some degree. But the other component is cognitive arousal. So like that's kind of how awake and how alert you feel, right?
Okay.
And so it's the feeling of people who are not morning people and you wake up in the morning and you're just like groggy and you need a coffee. That's low cognitive arousal, right?
Yeah.
And then people who wake up in the morning and they're like super alert and ready, that's higher arousal,
Yeah.
right? So when you're studying, you want to be at that higher alert phase, and music can help with that. There was a study that maybe you kind of referenced a little bit in the beginning, and something that became referenced is the Mozart effect. They played Mozart before people did like a test, and then they did better on the test than other pieces of music. And so then there was this sort of belief for a while that Mozart is better and you should play Mozart for your baby and you should all this stuff, right?
Right.
When they did more studies to follow up, what is precisely this effect, they realized it's not Mozart, it's that the piece they played was very upbeat and had a quick kind of tempo,
Yeah.
and it was increasing people's cognitive arousal, and the other piece was slower and more mellow, and so people were getting more kind of relaxed and sleepy and not in a great space
Right.
for their tests. So
Oh, do you know anything about instrumental versus
versus,
lyrics?
so I mean, in general, music that's instrumental and like upbeat enough that it's maybe a quicker tempo to get your brain awake is good. As soon as you add lyrics in, now you've got semantics. You've got other
Right.
things with something with meaning that you might be able to relate to as a human, and that might take your attention away from what you're doing.
Right.
So instead of just kind of getting you to that nice and alert space so that you can focus, now you're actually like, oh, what's this song? Oh, I like this. Oh, what's he singing about? And
Yeah.
then you forget what you're doing, right?
So I feel like that's a good transition then to the getting pumped up,
yeah.
because you're a fighter going out. You're not going to be listening to Summer Breeze Makes Me Feel Fine, or maybe you are, but maybe you like the dichotomy of like
Right.
that. But
Sure,
typically, I know, go back to AC/DC playing in the locker room, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
AC/DC, yeah, Thunderstruck, we're going to hit some people with a football, So I could see in that regard where the lyrics do play a big part in the,
yeah.
preparation aspect
Sure.
of music.
I think lyrics have a big part to play in that for sure. If the lyrics have some message that is helping you to just to get in the zone and
Yeah.
do what you need to do. But also the cool thing is that our motor system is very much connected to our auditory system. And our body responds to tempo. Our body responds to a rhythmic beat, even when we're not thinking about moving. So the motor parts of our brain, if you hear a beat, are gonna start firing at the beat that you're hearing and getting ready to move in a sense, right?
And so are we always looking for pattern recognition in our brains, do you think? Or
this would be more like, if you think about dancing, right?
Yeah.
And what songs can you dance to and what songs are difficult to dance to,
Mm-hmm.
right? It would be ones that have like a really clear pulse,
Yeah.
and then maybe there's a little bit of syncopation, a little bit of kind of grooviness to them, but not too much that you're confused, but there's just a nice kind of groove
Right.
to it, and then you're gonna be able to move. That works for getting you like pumped up too, to go and do sports or something where you're moving
Right.
your body, you're waking up that motor part of your brain a little bit.
Right. And then there's the getting pumped up for something, a performance
Mm-hmm.
or an athletic endeavor, of running a marathon,
Yeah.
anything like that. But what about the music you listen to when you're doing exercise
Yeah.
or something like that? We can all relate to that, right?
Totally.
For whatever reason, we all want that kind of dance beat. We want that
Yeah.
thing that helps propel us.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so I'm gonna get really nerdy here.
Yeah,
okay?
that's why
This
we have
is
you here.
Perfect. This is super fascinating because what our brain does when we hear some sort of rhythmic beat, especially if you're talking about exercise.
Yeah.
If it's, let's say you're running and you find a song that has a really strong beat at the tempo that you're trying to run,
Yeah.
and it's matching, your brain hears that beat and it sees it as a deadline. You're like, okay, I have to do this movement, let's say running, and I have between this beat and like this many milliseconds to do it. The timing accuracy, the temporal accuracy of our brain in response to sound is very precise. What that means is that your movements become more efficient, because instead of, it's like, when you're working on any kind of project, if you have 5 months to do the project, it's gonna take you 5 months. If you have a week, you're gonna get it done in a week, and you do
Yeah.
it really efficiently.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with sound and movement. We do it more efficiently. So that's why if you're exercising and you have music that has a strong beat that is at the tempo that you're going, your endurance is gonna be longer because everything in your body is more efficient, which
Okay.
is so cool.
That's amazing stuff.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to work with stroke patients a couple years ago in a research study that I was involved in. These are folks who had, had a stroke, and so one side of their body was paralyzed and they had a lot of trouble with movement. What we did is we were working on arm movements so that they could just use that arm more around the house and whatever they needed to do. And it was super fascinating because, we would assess before and after, and when we had them do a certain movement, let's just a simple reaching movement, right? And you'd see kind of a lot of variety in the movement, and they're trying to reach up to this thing, and then they reach back, and it's tricky, right? And then we would figure out what tempo works for them. We would also figure out songs and melody lines that mirrored the structure of the movement. So pitch going up if the arm is going up, volume going up, or having more complexity in the chords if it's a more tricky movement, things like that. And what we saw is that once you get those rhythmic endpoints of the movement, they're like, okay, I have to go here to here, and I have this amount of time. All of a sudden you see the movement go from this to this.
Wow.
And it's incredible.
And if the music is gone, does that go away?
There were some gains where you're actually training the muscles now to be more efficient, and it takes a lot of practice. It's like basically learning to move again right from scratch, just the same way as you'd use music with a really good beat while you're exercising, just to kind of give you more efficiency and help you practice whatever workout you're doing. You can do that with people who are working on movement rehabilitation to help them practice and get better at new movement patterns. So we had folks come in who had been several years post-stroke, didn't think they were going to get any movement back. They weren't totally perfect or anything by the end, but they had more range of motion than they ever thought that they would gain back.
And with a stroke patient, this is more a medical question, but the paralyzation is in the brain. It's a brain injury. From the brain not getting enough oxygen during the stroke process.
Right. So a bunch of brain cells on one half of the brain have died, which means that one side of the body is going to be affected.
Functioning. Yeah. That is really cool.
That is cool stuff.
All right, you got another one for me?
Sure, yeah. So there's a new kind of field in this connection between music and movement that's been growing called movement sonification. It was started in like rowers, like Olympic rowers or whatever. Not only are they using like a rhythmic beat to help them structure, because you've got to all row at the same time.
Right.
Which if you look back in history and you think about, I don't know, I'm from Canada, so like the Canadian voyageurs or people who are in their canoes, and there's so many songs that they would sing to keep them in tempo, right?
Right.
And so now...
And that's across all cultures.
Right. We know that music and tempo keeps us in rhythm together, but melody also, and pitch seems to have an effect. So when people are rowing, it's not just, let's say, a beat that keeps them in, but there's new technology now where they can translate, kind of like I was talking a minute ago about, but translate the horizontal and vertical axes and the three-dimensional axes of the movement into a pitch, and have that, be some sort of simple sound like brum, brum, or whatever, right? It's just giving that extra level of precision that makes the rowers all in sync with each other, so they're getting really good results from it. So using music in athletic training is very cool. And then now we're starting to think, well, wait a second, if we can use it for athletes who are training their movements, what about people who have some sort of injury or working on their motor skills? How can we use music to sonify those movements and give the brain extra feedback to help them, learn those movements in a more efficient way, and maybe a more fun way than just kind of doing your exercises over and over.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot more to go with all this. There's a whole future ahead.
Oh, absolutely.
Of integrating this into, even more so, into helping our lives.
Yeah.
I assume.
Yeah.
I hope.
Absolutely.
We've covered a lot of really fascinating topics, but I want to also ask you about how music can help, like memorization, right? Studying's part of it, but just like memorizing things. I think back to when my kids were learning all 50 states.
Yeah.
And they had a song, they turned it into a song, and all of a sudden, like, almost every kid in the class could get it right because of the song. So what's up with that?
Yeah. So we have our sensory memory, which is, when someone says something to you and then you weren't really listening, but then you can kind of replay it if you in with 30 seconds, and you can and then respond to it as if you heard it, right? So that's your sensory memory. It's like about 30 seconds-ish long, and you're just intaking the world around you, and and
choosing
which thing you're going to focus
something.
on. Yeah, exactly. And then the things that you focus on get into your short-term memory. So you're going to remember them for, you know, I don't know, a few days or depending on the person, a little while. And then the stuff that we rehearse in the short-term memory goes into our long-term memory. In our short-term memory, we can only keep about 7 plus or minus 2, this is the number, pieces of information in there. That's it. A technique that you can do is, they call it chunking. So trying to combine different pieces of information together in groups so that you have to remember fewer pieces of information with different subparts. So what music does is it offers us a way to chunk that information together. So instead of remembering 50 states, you're remembering one song. And then it just makes it a million times easier.
So if I'm at some schmooze fest, and I meet, you know, let's say I meet 50 people, should I, and then, you know, I forget their name immediately, right? Should I, like, when I meet someone and they say their name, should I immediately, like, sing it into a melody, you think?
You totally could do that. You know, pick a favorite melody that you like, put their name in there, maybe some, you know, so-and-so has brown hair. Don't sing it out loud because that'd be weird, you know.
There's always new tricks to try.
Totally.
I think what's really interesting, too, is I think we've only scratched the surface with these things. Like, it's something you're studying, but when I was growing up, none of this was talked about or even thought about.
Right.
I think we can really use this as an amazing tool into the future. I mean, obviously we have a breakthrough going on, and we've got the you know, intelligent future working on this stuff like you. So I'm excited to see where this all goes.
I think the cool thing is, as we experience music and use music in our lives, there's probably so many things that we're doing that are benefiting us in ways that we don't even realize, right? But now the exciting part is that people are starting to notice and say, hey, this happens. Like, you know, music helped me memorize my ABCs when I was a child. Like, what if we study how that works? And then how can we use that to maybe help folks who have had a brain injury and their memory is struggling and they need to remember their phone number or their address, right? And all of these kinds of things, that it becomes very, very practical.
All right, I just want to thank you again, Nicole. It's Nicole Richard. It's been really fun.
It has been fun.
It's been really educational for me, but fascinating at the same time. You're a music therapist and, you know, an expert in that field, so we're going to leave some resources.
Yeah, just a bunch of music therapy resources and websites that'll have more information for you.
Diving into all the ways music lights up sections of the brain and affects our mood was fascinating. Learning that music has the power to make us move and groove, or even has what it takes to help people heal, is inspiring. It seems that we're only scratching the surface on this stuff, and I'm excited to better understand how else music can help us. Thanks for tuning in with us today. For more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel right now and ring the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any great content. And look for Curiosity Stream on social media. Links are below.